All right then, hello people. Welcome to our live program. This is Milad Resaeimanesh. I'm the Central Committee of Ex-Muslim in Scandinavia chairman, and this is the live program we're running about a very controversial topic: FIFA World Cup in Qatar, a progress toward Islamism. I'm pretty sure there's like so many things people would like to share, and there are so many debates happening at the moment about the events in Qatar. Today, I'm very pleased to have two panelists here. Zara, most probably all of you guys know Zara. She's been around during the past programs we had, and she's quite well known. I think everyone knows Zara. And of course, in the very last minute, Ghada accepted to join us for this program, which is a pleasure to have you here, Ghada. Thank you for being here. Um, Today, in the 1 hour, we're trying to discuss the World Cup in Qatar um, from different perspectives and try to express our opinion about the incidents and things happening at the moment in Qatar. As I said, I'm trying not to talk too much. I'm trying to be the host if I can. I cannot guarantee that. All right. The first questions. I'm going to start with Ghada since this is the first time Ghada like participating in our show. How you evaluate things in Qatar? First of all, like the most important question that many people asking, why Qatar was chosen at the very first point to be the host for the World Cup? What's going on? I mean, what happened that Qatar was chosen to be the host?
I mean,
What do you think
the
about it?
story is all well known. There are news stories about it. Qatar did bribe the FIFA officials in order to get it in Qatar, and also they bribed them in order to move it from summer to winter because it's extremely hot in Qatar. So, like, that's what happened. I mean, it's a very gas-rich country. It's one of the Gulf nations, and they try their best to get as much recognition or whatever it is. It could be that they're trying to be a stronger force. I'm not really sure, like, why exactly the Qatar did it, but I mean, it's so obvious that the reason is bribery. I mean, even the FIFA officials, like, they cannot deny it.
Yeah, let me like paraphrase my question like this before we going to Zara and like asking the same thing. Is like Qatar is somehow has like very powerful Islamic government, I think, and they don't really respect the homosexual. They don't really respect the women's right, like the modern values we have, global values we have, and like as a country who are supposed to like international events like World Cup, how on earth you cannot still denying the homosexual rights, women's rights, atheist, ex-Muslim rights, and then still be the host? Like, of course, like Qatar is very rich, so most probably they've been like paying for the like how to the authorities working for FIFA. But how like I mean. It's kind of, I mean, it's a big question. Like, how can you be so homophobic and still be the host of World Cup? You think?
I think a very simple and nuanced answer would be tourism and just boosting their, I guess, their international outlook on how people view Qatar. Like the violations, a lot of the discrimination happens within Qatari communities and obviously the migrant workers as well. However, in terms of the revenue that's been brought in, obviously oil being one, however, tourism and how they invite other people to their country, like hosting FIFA is like a win-win. You get a lot of people in, you're making a lot of money, they know that you have to bend to their rules, and they're also going to have a lot of publicity around it. Also, mind you, FIFA, I can't imagine, has ever been hosted around the Middle East before for many reasons, obviously. Sorry, 1 second. Yes, for many reasons, but I think the criticism that Qatar is receiving is well, obviously their human rights violation, but there is a lot of there's a lot of red herrings when not only Muslims but even the woke left is talking about, oh, it's Islamophobic, you just don't want Muslims to host it, you just think that this is a Western thing to do. And I feel like the dialogue is kind of moving away from what actually is the problem. Like if we look at the obviously the migrant workers' lives that were that were lost during building the stadium, but also a lot of different aspects in terms of their human rights laws and violations, and like how they're policing any protests or any flags, and deporting people. Like Peter Tatchell was deported from Qatar back to Australia.
Yeah,
I think.
let me ask you something, Zara. Like I think it was like the previous program we had. You said like these Muslim community always like try to be on the position to be like a victim. Like just imagine like Qatar could not be the host of the World Cup because of the women's situation or like homosexual situation, blah blah blah. Like don't you think like that would be like a chance for Islamists to say like you see the world, the West doesn't like us, the Islamophobia exists, and like the reason is like Qatar cannot be the host is because they hate Islam. Like how you see the like evaluation and relationship between these two.
Ghada, do you want to go for this and then I can answer?
I can give a little bit. So it's very interesting because I'm a Gulf Arab. I'm from the eastern province in Saudi Arabia. So I'm very
Virgin or Arabian Gulf, which one is?
Saudi Arabia, the Arabian, Persian, whatever the fuck it's called, Gulf. So when you are from there, they give you essentially it's an us versus them mentality. It's very George W. Bush era. You're either with us or against us. You can't have a nuanced like critique of the government, of the rules, because in all of these countries, not just Saudi Arabia, they always say that we rule by the Quran and the Sunnah. So when Qatar or Saudi Arabia or Kuwait, or I mean, just think about the UAE, Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Sharjah and whatever these these Emirates, they have opened up to the world, and you go there and you see firsthand how they treat their migrant workers. You go into the households of the actual Emiratis or the Gulf Arabs in general, and you'll find a maid or two. Of course, they don't have their passport. The passport is with the head of the household. You have a bunch of drivers, even in countries where women are able to drive. They would have a driver. So, and they treat them essentially like slavery. So these countries, they have this in their mind, the Gulf Arabs, that they're special. It's not just Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia like always mentions it, like we're very special because we are the birthplace of Islam, so you can't judge us by other country standards. But you have also all of these other so they also have these other provisions that Qatar, Kuwait, whatever, like we're Muslim countries, we're Islamic countries. We we only answer to Allah. I mean, you get to see it in most of their flags. You see it in their government buildings. All of these other places. I mean, you see it literally everywhere. In addition to that, you get to see essentially the worship of these monarchs, Al Thani, Al Sabah, Al Saud, all of these people, they were worshipped. They are essentially even above Islam, which is why they have these extreme, horrendous ways they're treating, their migrant workers, people that are racist, all of that other stuff. And of course, if, for example, FIFA or whatever it is, other organizations out there come up and be like, okay, so we can't really host. You can't really let you host because this, and that. First of all, you're extremely homophobic country. Homosexuality is illegal in your country. Second of all, you treat women as second-class citizens. Even your laws, no matter how open they become, the social structure is so that whatever is the public wants is what goes. And unlike here in America or anywhere in Europe where it's like, okay, whatever it is that you are is how you are going to be judged. In places like this, no, it's an umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you are told that as a Saudi, as a Qatari, or as a Gulf Arab, they will immediately turn it into, I am the victim, because they can't do anything wrong. You don't understand. This is our culture. Our culture is being anti-LGBTQ, being anti women's rights, because women's rights have to be within Islam. So when they look at it, it's like, oh, they're attacking Islam.
Yeah. I have a question. First of all, I would like to express my own feeling. Like, there's nothing more fascinating to say, like, someone atheist from Saudi Arabia, especially if you're women or homosexual. This is like really great to hear what you're saying as a, like, Saudi citizen. That's awesome. Um, the thing is, like, the question I would like to raise is, don't you think, like, if like Qatar or like country like Saudi Arabia or Dubai cannot be the host for such international events, that also, like, let fanatic and Islamists to stay in power, so there would be no reform, like what's happening in, like, in Saudi, for example, since the bin Salman is like running the country. That's what I've heard. You can correct me, Gada. Like,
Mhm.
there are some reforms regarding, like, secularism, more women rights, more like tolerance regarding ex-Muslims, like people who have, like, different point of view regarding Islam. So if Saudi Arabia or Qatar cannot be the host for such events, that also, like, let the Islamists to be more radical, and the other part of the Saudi who would like to reform Islam would be more marginal, or more be like, more weak. What do you think about that, Gada?
You see, if these reforms came with good intentions, I would agree with you. I would say yes, these are this is the right track. However, all of these changes are very, very, very shallow. I mean, take the UAE for example. It's one Dubai, for example, is one of the cities that has been open to the public, to the world, even before Doha became whatever it is, and Abu Dhabi became the way it is. So in Dubai, you go there and you see the big buildings, the big freeways that you go on, beaches, beautiful, everything is so good. But how about if you are, for example, an Australian woman? This is a true story. An Australian woman, you go to Dubai or another country, and you unfortunately get sexually assaulted or raped. You cannot go to the police. The police, if you go to the police, you are essentially as guilty as the person that raped you because you engaged in premarital sex. And this has been a story that has happened for so long. It even happened recently in Qatar when a Mexican official was raped, and she went to the police, and the police arrested her on charges of premarital sex. So these changes, yes, I understand, opening it up, hosting these, FIFA World Cups, opening, a Trump hotel in Saudi Arabia or whatever it is, having these huge music festivals in the Middle East. Yeah, fine. You're going to attract, the youth that is like waiting for this. But I don't really believe the other alternative is going to be Islamists, because if you look at these countries, if you look at the Al Saud, what they're doing with MBS, Al Thani, and I forgot what the UAE rulers are, because they're different wherever you're at. I forgot that. But I mean, these people, they don't want the Islamists to take power because they still need that for their economy. So if you do not give them what they want, they will have to force a change of some sort. And I give an example like Saudi Arabia in the 60s. Saudi Arabia in the 60s did not have women's education. Women were barred from education. So what happened was the West essentially put so much pressure on Saudi Arabia is that you have to open girls' schools, or else we'll cut ties or like reduce the amount of whatever. Like, it was so much international pressure. Same thing it goes also the same time when it ended slavery in the Gulf region. The Gulf area is the last place to end slavery in the way we knew it from before, which is literally buying people. And didn't happen until the 60s and 70s in the Gulf region. So, this did not, for example, give emergence to the rise of Islamists, even though it did a little bit, especially with the girls' education in Saudi Arabia, was given essentially to the Islamists just to shut them up. But it was taken again from them after 9/11. So the way these countries are going are not, they do not want Islamism to come back into their countries because it is destroying their country. It used to be they could just, export it outside, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Yemen, whatever. But now it's in their countries and they don't want
Mhm.
it. That's my view of it.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. I would like to talk about more about the bin Salman maybe in some other program, but
Yes.
that would be a
But,
great
yeah,
topic
but
as
I just
well.
wanted to give you like an example of how in the Gulf region, they all listen to Saudi Arabia. Maybe Qatar not as much, which is why they had that.
Yeah, Qatar is the bad son.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily follow. Right. Let's back to Zara. Zara, I've been like following your stuff on Instagram, and I noticed you kind of support and following what's happening in Iran at the moment. And like according to the Qatari authorities, they didn't let the Iranian protesters to have like specific flags and like how to say to show their protest against the football national team and what's happening in Iran, to show the solidarities and stuffs. There was some TV channel who were against the government. They couldn't get the visa to go to Qatar and report what's happening over there. Regarding these, women's revolution they calling in Iran, and like the things happening in Qatar. Qatar is cooperating with the Islamic regime and also do not recognize the women's rights as much as European countries do. How you see the effect of a revolution in Iran in the incidents happening in Qatar? Let me show you an example. This guy, we share his photo on Instagram of Central Committee of Ex-Muslim in Scandinavia. You see, he run through the pitch. I think it was Portugal playing against Uruguay, and he said like a respect for Iranian women, and then well, no, not this one, and then he no, in front he said like save Ukraine, and he's holding the LGBT, the rainbow flag. So basically, by his act, he criticizing three countries: Russia, Iran, and Qatar, and promoting LGBT movement during the game. What do you think about it? How you affect, how you evaluate the effect of women's revolution in Iran on the event happening in Qatar?
So, you know how they say all publicity is good publicity? So, while in the view of Qatar, when this is bad publicity, it actually shows the determination that not only players or viewers have, for the game, but also how it affects them personally with the war happening. And it's almost, I think, for any person who's empathetic and cares about human rights, it's almost their duty to vouch for that. I can't imagine that this person who's gone around um, the stadium was happy with the World Cup being hosted in Qatar. Of course, this was decided years ago, but he's trying to do his part. He's trying to do his part to show rebellion, but to also show bravery in his own way, to kind of further that notion that in some sense the players have a bit of power there, right? The game only runs if the players agree, and I'm sure there would be some players who didn't agree to play for it, but it is a big game. This is their careers, and they're risking it as well. A lot of them are risking it to, I think, put forward their passion to support humanity. And I know somebody, Tariq, said that, the separation of sports from religion. And that's a good point, but I'm going to interpret it the other way around and say it is so incredibly hard for, no matter you as a fan or a player or even an organizer, to support your personal beliefs, be it Islam or anything else, from your everyday job, in this case, football, not soccer. I'm just going to make that very clear. It's not soccer. But I think it's really hard for people to separate that, especially in this day and age. A lot of young people have gotten into politics. A lot of corporations have also dipped their toe when Ukraine war was happening and taking advantage of it. So it only makes sense that people do their part and promote what they believe in. Obviously, I am a fan of when they talk about more human rights, then they take advantage of the situation that's happening. But having those protesters cancelled, like people like Peter Tatchell deported, the threatening Iranian government threatening the players to behave, I think these are all signs of we're pissing them off. We're doing something right because they're so scared. Like the Iran protests are only thriving because the rest of the world is now watching even closer. They're passionate about it. And that means any form of, I guess, support to the Iranian people, but also people in Qatar and the LGBT community in Qatar is getting more attention to bring about a revolution or a reform, be it in Qatar or Iran. And I think it's really great to see that they're being kicked out, not because of what they're doing, but because they're actually standing up for something. And, you know, if he went around and nobody kicked him out, great work. I mean, really good work, but that's not going to catch the press. And we revolve around this we revolve around media being or social media being our source of information. I mean, that's one thing that has given rise to the reforms or the attempts to reform and make the Middle East a bit more tourist friendly, because a lot of the young people know what's out there. They're no longer in the era where this is the world you're given and this is where you have to stay. It's almost like The Handmaid's Tale, which I just finished watching. You know, when one person rebels, a lot of people are inspired to do that as well. But in some ways, it really scares me, obviously, for the people who are going to be hurt by this, like Iranians in jail or people being detained in Qatar because they're alerted about what they can stand for, or, you know, what they should continue to protest against, reform their own countries or other countries. I mean, it's definitely scary when, you know, there's prison or abuse that might be waiting at the door. But I'm incredibly proud to see that this is happening. So even if they're being kicked out, I mean, that publicity is getting more attention than I guess many of us who are sitting at home. I mean, I'm not putting us down. I'm just saying that, like, that's what media catches, so that's what they're going to do, and that's how people will see more of the reality of living in a country like Qatar, or attending or playing for FIFA.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would like to. Can I add something about the
Sorry.
especially when it comes to the LGBTQ community, and now like the rainbow flag in the Gulf or in the Muslim region in general is almost like it's like a monster. They are so scared of it. They have been trying to boycott Disney, boycotting all sorts of movies, saying these movies are trying to change our youth, making memes with like a family with an umbrella that is like keeping them away from all the evils of the homosexual community and the gay agenda or whatever the fuck they're trying to talk about. But it's become so. Before, like growing up in Saudi and growing up in the Middle East too, like I've been to the majority of the Gulf nations. So over there, nobody talks about homosexuality. Nobody talks about being gay. It's always looked at as something like horrible, something disgusting, something haram. They want you to either keep it to yourself or never talk about it, get yourself, cured by reading the Quran and or whatever it is that people do. So now that Qatar is literally showing the world how much they don't care, they are doubling, tripling, quadrupling down. No, this is our culture. Please, women, dress modestly. Everybody else, if we see one rainbow, and just like Zara said, like them being detained, them being shown on camera to be harassing people, assaulting them sometimes, or the way they've been treating Israelis by like literally looking the other way and moving, and the way they've been essentially cracking down on anything rainbow. That, just like Zara said, all publicity is good publicity, because to me, nobody is showing how horrible that country is like Qatar itself.
Actually, I have a question for both of you. Do you I don't know how much you followed the matches. I literally, the first time I opened my phone today to see who won and who lost, apart from all the news on Twitter and stuff. How much do you think that Muslims who are not from Saudi, who are not from other countries that are actually playing, are celebrating that it's happening in Qatar and take it as a pride versus an insult, even if they are liberal Muslims? Because I have that with some of my family members, which, they're like, oh, great, it's happening in Qatar, Muslim countries hosting, this is why. And every time there's a criticism, there's a deflection of like, oh, only because it's in a Muslim country, that's why you have a problem, not because of the human rights. How much do you think is actually about the game versus about where it's hosted and why it's hosted in the perspective of a Muslim community?
Ghada, you would like to answer it?
I hate to mention, but I really don't have a lot of Muslim friends anymore.
Well, I personally haven't seen that much celebration because Qatar, of course, is counted as Islamic countries, but it's not really popular. Iranians do not really like Qatar because they are Sunni after all, and Saudis and Dubai and these sort of countries do not like Qatar because they don't really follow the ghettos and the coalitions they have. Qatar belongs to the Iran and Russia camp, not to Saudi somehow. So I haven't seen as in that perspective, people celebrating that World Cup is going to a Muslim country. But I've seen some of the people who would like to see more, as you say, a tourism friendly policy in the Middle East. They were happy that a country like Qatar could be the host, and they felt it's gonna be huge jump in terms of human rights and having more tolerance towarding and regarding ex-Muslim women's and LGBTQs. So I would like to ask this question, Ghada, again. There are some documents showing Qatar is in charge of a money laundry for Islamic groups like Taliban, somehow Al Qaeda and stuffs. Yeah, Taliban even before the U.S. troop was leaving Afghanistan, had an official office in Qatar, and some of the money that some of the money laundering they used to do, it was through Qatar. So a country, I mean, Qatar is already rich. We all know that. I think they have rich sources of gas and very few number of people living there. So they are rich already. But how you think hosting such a international events in a country like Qatar would help Islamism to grow, to have to go for how to say do more money laundering, be much bigger, be more rich, and be more strong, generally speaking? I mean, do you think having World Cup in Qatar would help Islamism as a political movement to be stronger than before or not?
I think that just before you answer that, I was going to add there have been so many campaigns and whatnot about women trying on the hijab while they're at Qatar FIFA, or spreading Islam through the boards, or God has said this, God has said that. And there's a big marketing campaign while this is happening as well towards bringing more consideration and compassion to Islam, without obviously the nasty parts of the whole religion, but they're making it sound like, oh, you should join us, join the cult, drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. My answer to that is going to be very similar to how a lot of countries export the horrible stuff that they don't want in their own countries to other places. America has done this. The European countries have done this, and Saudi Arabia and Qatar are not, they have done this as well. So yes, I wouldn't say Islamism. I would say more I don't like the word Islamism because it's not very encompassing of everything that happens in fundamentalist Islam, because it's not just a political movement. If it was just a political movement that is like, yeah, we're embracing Islam, but we're going to give everybody like equal rights, I would be like, okay, maybe. But it's there are so many types of Islamism, I guess, that you can call it. They can go all the way to like ISIS and Taliban and Al-Qaeda and all of those other places, or you could be like, an American or European Muslim organization that
Or
is
Hezbollah, the Shia Islamists in Lebanon.
well, Hezbollah, yeah, Hezbollah is whatever. Um, so you have all of this, and the reason I believe that I don't believe that they are trying that it will give power to Islamism is because if they have the more money that they could use, because let's go back even a step further. Oil and gas are not going to be the major they're declining. The demand is declining. Other places are finding different methodologies of creating energy. We may still need it. Obviously, I'm an engineer through and through. I don't believe that oil and gas are going to go away in the next 30 to 40 years. I think it's going to stay for a long time, but I think that we're going to be moving away from it. So the main reason why these countries are moving away from just let's export oil and gas is they need the money. So if they need the money, they're not going to try and help a failing state like Afghanistan right now with Taliban. I don't really believe that's going to happen. That's just my opinion, but I just believe because they need the money, they need the tourism, the reputation is essentially crap right now. They're at the very bottom. They have been criticized for everything under the sun, from bribing to killing a lot of migrant workers, to treating their women badly, to treating, the LGBT community horribly, being put essentially on the international world like this is how it is.
Yeah, Ghada, let me ask you something. It's like, sorry, Zara, like for me, it's very interesting to have someone from Saudi Arabia. For those of you who don't know, Ghada is from Saudi, I'm from Iran, and Zara is from
A'udhu
Tanzania.
billah, but I was Shia, so I guess you're my friend.
Yeah, well, I was born in the Mashhad, which is very well-known city for Shia.
I went to Mashhad 3 times.
Oh, really?
Imam Ali Rida, he's my heart.
Yeah, well, that's my city. I have still family and relatives and friends living over there. So you know what? During this couple of years, Iranian regimes are really hating Saudis. I mean, even more than Israel, even more than US. Bin Salman is the Satan. Yeah, and there is TV channel called Iran International. They saying Bin Salman personally sponsored that TV channel to be the voice of oppositions of the regime. I have been interviewing with that TV channel a couple of times. Yeah, so I am one of those people who working for Bin Salman at the moment, according to what they say. And the first match, Iran lost 6-2 against England, and they also really hate England because they say the Islamic regime has this sort of ideology we're supposed to be anti-imperialism, and imperialism means Israel, Saudi Arabia, UK, very important, and US. So it was really vital for them to win against US and UK, or England, sorry, and they lost the both games. And the first game was 6-2, Iran lost, and the day after, Argentina lost against Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia won, Lionel Messi and stuff. So it was a disastrous situation for the Iranian those days. There was so many jokes about things happening in the Twitter and stuff. So my question specifically say, how you see the fight between Saudi government and the Iranian government in Qatar? So Qatar has playing both sides somehow, be sometimes on the Saudi side, sometimes on the Iranian side, and they were you could see this sort of fight is also on the World Cup between Iran and Saudi. How you evaluate and how you see things between the fight between Iran and Saudi?
I've always thought the fight between Saudi Arabia and Iran is just an extension of what happened between Muawiyah and Ali. It has never stopped. It's unbelievable how they are still, because they are exactly the same thing. The only difference is one is called Ayatollah and one is called Mohammed bin Salman or Salman bin Abdulaziz. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when I see these things, when I see how they are trying to fight, I mean, they already have proxy wars everywhere. They have one in Yemen already. They've been, and it's really, I find it extremely hypocritical of Iran to call other countries colonizers when they are also colonizers.
Exactly. The policy they're following in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iraq,
Iran,
in Afghanistan. Yeah.
and not
You're
only
absolutely
that, I
right.
mean, they there is a dispute on land, not land, I guess, not even property, just like oil fields. Apparently, they've been stealing from the UAE for a while, but so has Saudi. So who cares? I don't really understand how this weird dynamic has happened. However, my interpretation of it is that Saudi is going to try to make it look like they're the big guy, that they're better, that they're stronger, trying to scare these people away. And Iran is going to try to, like, the thing is, like, the thing that's happening with Iran is that I don't really think the players are, I wouldn't say the players are the Iranian government, because unlike the Gulf nations where people are so, I don't know if it's sheltered or indoctrinated that they cannot think outside of the box, Iranians are a lot more educated, more aware of their rights. They've gone through a period, they've seen it, they've felt it, they've had it. So I don't really see that Iranians are, the Iranian team is not a representation of the Iranian regime, is what I'm trying to say.
I think I just wanted to add to it, like there's more radicalization happening outside the Middle East than there is inside the Middle East. So in the case of Iran specifically, their biggest defenders are not in the state. The biggest defenders are outside the state, enabling the state to continue, which includes other Shia minorities as well. And that's also the case of why, you know, a lot of the Middle East have been trying really hard to flex their money, to start purchasing football teams, to start purchasing different aspects of Twitter in this case, but also a lot of different political figures as well, to kind of recruit them in different ways, or to allow their radicalism or their ideas to propagate beyond their own countries, because their people have suffered and their people are rebelling and their people are going to continue to want the Western lifestyle, because this is the era where, you know, the younger generation have grown up with TikTok, social media. They know what's out there and they demand that they get the same opportunities as well. I think kind of going back to Qatar and the World Cup, there was this really nice debate with Mariam Namazi, Peter Tacho, and I think it was Abdullah Al-Anduzi. And it was, I just wanted
Abdullah
to
was
kind of
supporting stoning, if I'm not mistaken, that debate. Yeah.
exactly. No,
Yeah.
so I wanted to highlight that debate. If you guys haven't watched it, please go watch it. It's by Byline. It was a really good interview, because you can clearly see a man living in the West supporting the horrendous crimes from Islamic law, not just Qatar, but, you know, supporting these horrendous crimes in terms of, you know, who said people are allowed to have premarital sex. We don't know homosexuality. And, you know, there were some really great responses which really highlighted the kind of danger, but the kind of danger we face from radicalism in the West. And then when we have people who, you know, criticize ex-Muslims, who do not understand that dissent, even Muslims who dissent, is a vital it is vital to the progress of the younger generations, because it's the younger generations that are leaving religion, that identify as no religion. And that's what really scares countries like this. So Qatar hosting the World Cup is their attempt to bring people back. It's their attempt to start modernizing their country, at least in the eyes of others. But they're not really good at taking criticism. And that interview was like, it was really heartbreaking to see that, there's this man in the West who is supporting these ideas. So, what kind of generation is he raising? But also, I don't feel safe ever having kids in that house being brought up with those ideas. I had a chat today, with Dame Zara Khan in the UK, and we were talking about ex-Muslims, and in the UK and the negative consequences of it. And it just hit me where there's a lot of moral policing happening within conservative communities in the UK, whether it's against liberal Muslims or ex-Muslims. They're all afraid to speak out their ideas to promote secularism or to promote having a different interpretation of said religion. But yeah, and I think like a lot of people who are, here supporting, they're like, oh, these are white people given their privilege. Sometimes, not all white people, but these are white people who have been given their privilege, talking about how, it's Islamophobic, blah, blah. But then they're also slowly starting to adopt and understand, oh, women are being kept safe because they have drivers. Oh, they're protecting women. Oh, great. That's really nice. And I think the political landscape has pushed a lot of what used to be liberals to kind of be regressive as well, to shut us up, to silence a lot of people, but to also silence the critiques who do have a valid point in front of them in terms of the violation that Qatar has been responsible for. Even if, they've talked about reforming their laws for migrant workers, women rights, I think it's not been enforced to that level that it should have been. And that when we accept that, in Saudi Arabia, when women could drive, the world celebrated. And the feminists are like, see, like, there are changes happening. No, woman, like, if you can, like, go out wearing what you want and you're still celebrating over women driving in Saudi Arabia, like, it's hypocritical because you don't want to give the same rights you
Racist.
have to other people.
It's
It's
racist.
exactly it's racist. When they talk about celebrating diversity, when they talk about even in corporations, when they talk about celebrating diversity or hiring people from marginalized communities, but you're not actually doing anything for the marginalized community. You want those quotas, but you're not actually encouraging dialogue. You're not actually encouraging change. You're not giving, people from Muslim background more credit. You're just, you're like, oh, here's a little right you have. Go be happy. Don't complain. And I think that is the most disturbing. I think that is the most disturbing aspect of being in the West, having freedom of speech, and then still supporting regressive values, really.
Yeah. I'm having a very difficult time finding that debate on Mariam Namazi Twitter page. As you guys know, there's like so many things happening at the moment, and there's like thousands of posts at the same time. But I think that's the one you were trying to point it out with the Byline TV, yeah, with the Peter Tuchel, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's the same debate. But
yeah, so Peter Tuchel makes a really good point here. It's like you can be arrested when you look gay, not even like whether you go and tell somebody you're gay, like the fact that you may look feminine, but also conversion therapy exists, but nobody criticizes it.
It's the only therapy for homosexuality in Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. If you by any chance, and I hope nobody, please just don't do it in the Middle East. Don't come out. Just come out when you are safe, please. if they come out to their parents, or if their parents suspect that they might be gay, and like literally they could be straight or bisexual and just like look feminine, or um prefer feminine dress. I don't even freaking know what that even means right now. So that is the only way. If you are taken to a doctor, they immediately put you through conversion therapy.
All right. Yes, Sarah. Go for
No,
it.
that
I
was
would
it.
like, yeah, I would like to like ask the final question. We almost done for this program. It's like 50 minutes we're talking, almost. Um, the thing is, we see like there is like big range of ex-Muslim movement, like atheist movement in Saudi Arabia, Iran, Qatar, Afghanistan, Pakistan. Um, and you see like these like social, I mean, sort of like policy being followed by the Qatar authorities against homosexuals, like women's rights, blah blah blah, and like try to keep the FIFA World Cup Islamic, being criticized mostly by the people inside Middle East. There's like many Iranians who are criticizing this, and people from Saudi and stuff. And I know like big range of Saudis, they are atheists, like big names like Rana Ahmad, Raif Badawi, Ensaf Haidar. They are like Ensaf. I really like her, and Rana as well. There's like big number of atheists in from Saudis and Iran and Pakistan. How you see the future? Like Zara pointed out, like the young generation of the Middle Eastern, like they know about their rights. They know what's happening in the world through social media, and they asking the same rights that the teenagers and the young generation having in the Western Europe and North America. How you see the future, like regarding the Islamism? How it's gonna end? Can this survive by this government, by having such a generation, young people in the country? Like at the moment, Iran, for example, having like a women's revolution. It's very anti-Islam. They're attacking mosques. They're burning hijabs. They like criticizing Islamic values. So I think the Islamic regime of Iran have a difficult time in future. How you evaluate Islamism? I mean, Ghada, you're not happy with this word, but like,
I know, I
like
know, I know. It's okay.
how you see it in future? Like, can we be expected to see changes in early future by the young generation or not? Ghada, would you like to start?
Yes, I am very, very, very optimistic about that. I have spoken with a few younger generation, and the people that are born in the 90s, 2000s. They are doing absolutely amazing. They are more open. They accept people from the LGBT community. They believe in women's rights. Some of them don't care about virginity. However, unfortunately, I don't see it like immediately changing to what we have here in the West. However, I would say it would be akin to being in 1970s United States, when the AIDS epidemic was going on, and people were looking down at homosexuality, but it's not illegal. People were still looking down on premarital sex, even as far as the freaking 80s, even now. But I do believe that the next step, or what's we're going into, at least in the Middle East, at least in the Gulf nations, is something similar to that, where it is not very open to the idea of, let's say, gay marriage, or two gay people cohabitating or being together. But I do see it happening, as in, okay, stops being against the law. Unfortunately, the harassment will continue to stay, but the countries, you have to also keep in mind, like with Islamism, is okay, yes, it will, Islam and the religiosity will keep going down, but there are things that are inherent in the religion that make it a little difficult to do that. The misogyny that is inherent in it, and of course the homophobia that is inherent in it. So those will be the last to go whenever these reforms actually happen, that come from the younger people. But there are enough younger people that are tolerant and open-minded.
Yeah, and I think with the current political landscape, I feel like I've seen a rise of conservatism as well. You would think that younger people are likely to lean towards liberal views. I've also seen a rise in conservatism. I think in the case of Qatar, or largely the Middle East, there has been growing numbers of support group, like somebody has highlighted, and organizations that people can reach out to for support. It's not enough. It's actually not enough for the amount of people. It would be like one or two organizations covering the Gulf area with actual real support. But at the same time, I can't imagine this is enough for everybody there. I also can't, I can also understand, not understand, I can also imagine that a lot of people who are gay tend to internalize it and abuse other people who might come out as gay. So I think as a way of frustration in sometimes, because there's a lot of resentment towards different factors that, you know, you start harming some people. So I think our role as externals is to continue talking about these issues, highlighting support groups and support organizations, and continuing to find support or pair people up with the support organizations that do exist. And I think over time, like we've seen in the UK on last year's census that was just released yesterday, that non-religious groups have grown from 25% to 37% all around the UK, which tells us, well, you know, this is happening even more in Arab countries where, you know, there aren't many other religions. Like, yes, Christianity exists, and then Islam largely does exist. But I think there is a lot of growth in no religious group, or no association to religion, rather.
Yeah. There is a statistics done by a university in Netherlands saying like only 30% of Iranians believe in Islam. Only 30%. That's that's very astonishing result, and I think that's somehow true because specifically the young generation of the Iranians, they do not really follow Islam. And if you just like go on Facebook or Instagram, there's like thousands of page like attacking Islam and say like, you know, we are out of Islam, we hate Islam, we criticize Islam, blah blah blah. So I think you making a fair point, like, you know, non-believers are growing, and I think there's like, you know, much more atheists and ex-Muslim coming from Middle East. All right, I
Iran
think
especially, just one more thing, just
Sure.
Iran especially, like even when I was 12 years old and we were in Mashhad, everybody in my family thinking, you know, that they're going to be talking to the Iranians and they're all going to say how they're so happy to be under the Islamic regime. And every single one answered no.
That's true, and I just like, you know, kind of surprising and kind of interesting for me, like, you know, why you were in Mashhad, what you were doing there. Like,
Ziyarat.
yeah, but like, okay, I mean, I think you are born in like a Sunni family, right?
No, a Shia family.
Shia family. Okay, that makes sense, right? That's perfect. All right, okay, thank you for today. I think
Thank
we're
you.
done. Thank you for being in this show, specifically Ghada. That was the first time. It was great to have you over here. The podcast of the program will be will be produced and will be published on Spotify. Please feel free to share it with your friends or like anyone that you think might be interested in the things we talk about during the show. And if you would like to talk about more about what we said, I think it's a big topic, and there are like so many other factors that we didn't cover, or if you want to like add something, please feel free to contact us through the media we have at the Central Committee of Ex-Muslim in Scandinavia. And my special thanks for those who watched it live: Tariq, Ahmad, Homo sapien. And let me just have a special thanks for this guy who was not really happy about the show, and he was trying to say like, yeah, this guy Nasser, he said like, you know, only 4 people watching, and he was not actually happy about the things that we were talking about. But thank you, Nasser, for being for being the noise.
The other three people were my bot accounts. Just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, thank you all, and like, you know, keep your eyes open. Hopefully we're gonna have more program in the future. Thank you very much, and since the team program, take care. Thanks.